Have you ever wondered why we rush to people the moment something goes wrong, even though we know deep down that they cannot truly fix our hearts or change our destiny? Why is it that our first instinct is to seek comfort in those who are just as helpless as we are, while the one who created us, who knows the weight we carry, is quietly waiting for us to speak to him? Allah, the most merciful, already knows every detail of our struggles, even those we cannot explain ourselves. He knows the pain hidden behind our smiles and the exhaustion behind our strength. He is closer to us than our jugular vein, yet sometimes we treat him like he is far. The Quran reminds us, indeed, Allah is knowing of all things. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:28-2. That means he knows the tears that never fail, the words we never spoke, and the prayers we whispered under our breath when no one else could hear. When the Prophet Muhammad lost his beloved wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib in the same year, a year known as the year of sorrow, he turned to none but Allah. In that moment of deep personal grief, he sought strength not from the people around him, but from the one who understood his pain better than anyone else could. He isolated himself to reflect, to pray, to speak directly to his Lord. There is something profoundly healing about speaking to Allah. He doesn't interrupt, he doesn't judge, and he never gets tired of your voice. Every time you cry out to him, it's not a burden, it's an act of worship. Every tear that falls in sujud is seen by him. Every silent plea you make is known to him. This is why the Prophet would spend long nights in prayer, not asking people for help, but surrendering everything to the one who could ease it all. Sometimes when we speak to people, they may listen once or twice, but eventually they may grow weary, or worse, use our vulnerability against us. But when you speak to Allah, He elevates you. He wraps you in His mercy and sends tranquility into your heart. Even when nothing in your life seems to change on the outside, something within you transforms. Your heart finds peace. Madde Shimar, the Prophet, experienced this after the incident in Taif when he was rejected, mocked and physically harmed. He didn't turn to complain to his companions. Instead, he raised his hands and made a heartfelt dua to Allah alone. And what followed? The night journey, Al-Isra wal Miraj, a divine honor gifted to him by his Lord. You see, turning to Allah isn't just about asking for things, it's about returning home. It's about remembering that no matter how many people turn away, your Lord never does. He is Ar-Rahman, the most merciful. He is Al-Wakil, the disposer of all affairs. When you turn to Him, you're not just expressing need, you're declaring trust. You're saying, Ya Allah, I know you know, I know you care, I know you are enough. One night, when the Prophet was burdened with the weight of his mission, he stood in prayer until his feet swelled. When asked why he did this, despite being sinless, he replied, should I not be a grateful servant? Gratitude, trust and reliance, this is how he lived. Not by offloading his worries onto people, but by anchoring his heart in divine connection. So the next time your heart feels heavy and you feel like talking to someone, remember that the one who already knows is listening. He was listening before you even formed the words. Talk to Him first. Talk to Him always. You will never regret it, because when you open your heart to Allah, He never leaves you empty. Have you ever shared your pain with someone only to walk away feeling more empty than before? Have you ever opened your heart, hoping for healing, only to realize that no human response could truly ease the storm within you? We live in a world that often tells us, talk to someone, open up, let it out. But we forget that the best one to talk to is the one who already knows, who already understands, and who never misjudges your words or intentions. People may care for a moment, but their attention fades. They might try to understand, but they can never feel what you feel exactly the way you do. Even those who love you the most have their limits, but Allah is beyond all limits. He is the one who listens without judgment, heals without conditions, and responds without delay, according to His wisdom. In the Quran, Allah reminds us, is He not best who responds to the desperate one when he calls upon Him and removes evil? Surah An-Nam 27:62. When you complain to people, you expose your weakness. But when you complain to Allah, you expose your trust. After the loss of his son Ibrahim, the Prophet Muhammad felt grief, but he turned to Allah with full acceptance of His decree. He did not seek pity from others. He simply said the eyes shed tears and the heart feels sorrow, but we do not say anything except what pleases our Lord. Even in his pain, he knew that true healing comes from surrender, not from sympathy. Sometimes we look to people to fix what they cannot even understand. You tell someone your worries and perhaps they do care, but only Allah has the power to change your situation. He is the turner of hearts, the one who holds your life, your breath, your destiny in his control. People may offer a shoulder to cry on, but Allah offers peace that enters your heart without a single word spoken. A peace so quiet, yet so powerful, it can calm the loudest storms in your soul. When the Prophet was boycotted in Makkah with his companions, when food and water were scarce and suffering was intense, he did not spend his nights seeking worldly solutions. He turned to Allah in prayer. He taught his followers that the key to relief is not in complaining, but in connecting with the one who sees what is hidden, hears what is unspoken, and mends what is broken. There is a wisdom in keeping your pain between you and Allah. Not every burden is meant to be shared. Some are meant to drive you to your knees, to purify your heart, to pull you closer to your Rabb. When you pour your heart out in sujud, you're not speaking into the void. You're speaking directly to the one who created your heart in the first place. And he says, call upon me, I will respond to you. Surah Ghafir 40:60. The Prophet taught us the beauty of dua not just in times of ease but especially in hardship. In the battle of Qadr, when there were few against many, he didn't just prepare his companions for war. He raised his hands high and wept before his Lord, begging for help, seeking only Allah's support. He turned to him knowing that no one else could bring victory. And that is exactly what happened. Victory came from where no one expected. You might feel like nobody understands you, and maybe that's true, but that's not something to despair over. It's a reminder that the most sincere and fulfilling relationship you will ever have is with Allah. The one who created you knows exactly how to comfort you. His doors are never closed. His mercy is never delayed. His love is never conditional. While others might listen out of obligation, he listens out of mercy. The world may tell you that keeping everything inside is unhealthy, but Islam teaches us something deeper. Let it out, yes, but let it out in front of the one who will never misunderstand you, never get tired of you, and never betray your trust. When you complain to people, you are hoping for compassion. When you complain to Allah, you're receiving divine attention. There's a difference, and it changes everything. When the Prophet returned from Taif, wounded and rejected, he didn't sit with his companions and express anger or blame. Instead, he made one of the most beautiful and vulnerable du'as recorded in the Seer. His words were directed only to Allah, words soaked in humility, pain, and hope. And what was Allah's response? A journey through the heavens. Al-Isra, Wal-Miraj, honor beyond imagination. That is what happens when you complain to Allah with sincerity. He doesn't just listen, He responds in ways beyond your understanding. So the next time your heart feels crushed and you're tempted to vent to the world, pause, take a deep breath, make wudu, stand in prayer, and speak to the one who can actually do something about it. Not only will you find peace, but you will find strength, dignity, and light in your darkest moments. Why do we place our hope so heavily in people who are just as limited, just as fragile, and just as incapable as we are? Why do our hearts break over unmet expectations when deep inside we know that no soul can carry the burden of another? We often look for support in others, but every time they fall short, it hurts. What if that pain is a reminder, a divine whisper, that our true reliance was never meant to be on creation, but only on the Creator? The truth is, the more you rely on people to solve your problems, the more disappointed you will feel, because people have limits. Limits in time, in compassion, in understanding, and in power. Even those who love you deeply can't always be there. They might not know the right words. They may not fully grasp the storm inside your heart. But Allah, He knows before you even tell Him. He listens when no one else does, and He never leaves you waiting. The Quran teaches, and whoever relies upon Allah, then He is sufficient for him. Surah At-Talaq 65:3. This verse is not just comforting, it is life-changing. It's a shift in mindset from desperation to true surrender. When the Prophet Muhammad stood alone in front of his people with a message that was mocked and rejected, he didn't rely on the people to validate his mission. He relied entirely on Allah. For 13 years in Makkah, he was insulted, boycotted, and even physically harmed, but his trust in Allah never wavered. He never complained to people. He never lowered his mission just to gain human approval. He turned inward in faith and upward in hope. Sometimes you might feel that someone owes you support, attention, or help, and when they don't come through, you feel crushed. But that pain isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to redirect you, to turn your heart back to Allah, because the more you lean on people, the more they disappoint. And the more you lean on Allah, the more He surprises you with peace, with ease, with openings from places you never imagined. This is not theory, it is a promise from the one who never breaks his word. When the Prophet was with Abu Bakr in the cave during the Hijrah, and they heard the footsteps of the enemies approaching, Abu Bakr became afraid, not for himself, but for the Prophet. And what did the Prophet say? Do not be afraid. Indeed, Allah is with us. Surah At-Tawbah 9:40. In that moment of fear and danger, his heart was anchored in trust, not in numbers, not in weapons, not in strategies, but in Allah. That's the essence of true reliance. This doesn't mean we cut off people or isolate ourselves. Islam teaches us to love, to support, to help one another. But it also teaches us that emotional dependence on people is dangerous, because people change, hearts change, but Allah remains constant. His mercy does not fluctuate. His presence does not disappear. He is always there, waiting for you to come back, to call on Him first before anyone else. There were times when the Prophet had no worldly solution in sight, times when his companions were starving, when the enemy was stronger, when the odds were against them. But his strength came not from outside sources. It came from within, from a heart connected to Allah. At the Battle of the Trench, when the Muslims were surrounded, exhausted, and overwhelmed, he reassured his companions by reciting verses about Allah's promise and power. He reminded them that help comes from the unseen, and it did. Many of us think that if we just explain our situation better, someone will finally understand. But understanding is not what we need most. What we need is relief, guidance, mercy, and only Allah can give that. So trust Him, speak to Him, place your heart in His hands, and you will see that the same people who once disappointed you no longer have that power over you, because your peace no longer comes from them, it comes from your Creator. You were never meant to walk through this life leaning entirely on human beings. You were meant to walk with the world behind you and Allah in front of you. That is how you protect your heart. That is how you protect your faith. When you rely on Allah, you are never truly alone. You are walking with the one who parts seas, who heals wounds, who brings light out of darkness. And when your heart finally learns to rely solely on Him, you'll wonder why you ever trusted anything else. Have you ever asked yourself why your heart still feels heavy even after pouring it out to others? Why the burden remains even after people listen, comfort, or try to help? It's because the soul was never designed to find rest in people. It was created to find its peace in the remembrance of Allah. This world is filled with ears that can hear you, but only Allah holds the key to your peace. When you share your problems with people, there's always a risk. Some may not understand. Some may judge, some may speak of your pain in places it doesn't belong, but Allah, He conceals, He understands, He never uses your weakness against you. In the Qur'an, Allah reminds us, and when my servants ask you about me, indeed I am near. I respond to the call of the supplicant when he calls upon me. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:18-6. He is near, closer than your thoughts, closer than your tears. He doesn't just listen, He responds. When the Prophet Muhammad faced the rejection of Ta'if, he was wounded both physically and emotionally. The people mocked him, insulted him, and drove him out. But what did he do? He didn't go to complain to those around him. Instead, he raised his hands to the sky and made one of the most beautiful, heartfelt du'as ever recorded. In that moment of pure vulnerability, he turned only to Allah. That is the example of true faith. There is dignity in keeping your pain between you and your Lord. It's not weakness, it's strength. To cry in suhood, to beg in silence, to whisper your pain into your pillow at night, knowing that Allah hears it all, that is real healing. The Prophet would often retreat in solitude, not to escape people, but to connect more deeply with his Creator. He knew that the true cure to sorrow was not in conversation with the world, but in connection with Allah. Sometimes we think speaking about our problems to others will lighten the load, but often it only gives weight to our worries. It spreads our hurt wider instead of grounding it where it can be transformed. With Allah, you don't need to find the perfect words. You just need to show up with your broken heart, your tired soul, your silent tears, and He responds with mercy that no human can offer. After the death of his son Ibrahim, the Prophet did not scream in grief or complain to others. Instead, he acknowledged his sadness, but reminded himself and others that the heart grieves and the eyes shed tears, but we do not say except what pleases our Lord. Even in sorrow, his words were filled with submission and trust. His pain was real, but so was his reliance on Allah. It's not wrong to seek advice or support, but let your ultimate refuge be with the one who has control over every heart, every cure, and every outcome. Speak to Allah like you would speak to a friend, but with more hope, more trust, more sincerity. He already knows what you're going through, but He wants you to come to Him, because that moment of turning to Him is a sign of your faith. The Prophet taught us through his example that even in the darkest of times, the heart finds its light, not through people, but through prayer, remembrance, and trust in the one above. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, don't rush to complain to others. First, raise your hands, bow your head, and pour it all out to the one who never turns away. That is where true relief begins. Have you ever wondered why Allah allows you to feel the weight of loneliness, sadness, or pain, even when you've done everything right? Have you ever asked why, in moments of deep struggle, the people you expected to be there somehow disappear? It's because Allah wants your heart to detach from creation and attach completely to the Creator. He wants you to learn that true strength begins when you stop depending on others and begin to rely entirely on Him. In this life, we're often taught to be self-sufficient, to handle things on our own, or to seek help from those around us. But the heart of a believer understands that no matter how strong we appear, we are constantly in need of Allah. This is why the most powerful people spiritually are those who turn to Allah in their most vulnerable moments. They don't look for pity, they don't seek attention, they seek only the pleasure, mercy, and support of their Lord. When the Prophet Muhammad lost his beloved wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib in the same year, a period known as the Year of Sorrow, he did not go around seeking comfort from people. He was deeply hurt, but he turned to Allah for healing. He continued his mission with even more conviction, trusting that Allah was enough. Even when it felt like the world had turned its back on him, he never believed that Allah had. That is real tawakkul. Sometimes Allah removes people from your life not to punish you, but to purify your reliance, to show you that you don't need the world when you have Him, to teach you that peace doesn't come from human words but from divine remembrance. The Quran reminds us unquestionably, by the remembrance of Allah hearts find rest. Surah Ar-Ra'd 13:28. The peace you're searching for is not out there, it's within, and it begins with sincere connection to your Lord. The Prophet spent many nights alone in the cave of Hira before receiving revelation. He wasn't surrounded by crowds or comfort. He was alone with his thoughts, his heart, and his need for guidance. And that is when Allah chose to speak to him. When he was detached from everything and everyone, but entirely connected to the heavens. This is the state the believer must strive for. Not isolation from people, but isolation from dependency on people. It's natural to feel the urge to tell someone when you're in pain. But before you turn to them, ask yourself, have I turned to Allah yet? Have I poured my heart out to Him in the last third of the night? Have I made sincere dua, asking not just for ease, but for patience, for wisdom, for closeness to Him? You'll find that when your first response is turning to Allah, your heart becomes lighter, even if your situation hasn't changed yet. When the Prophet was surrounded during the Battle of the Trench and fear spread among the believers, he didn't panic. He turned to Allah, made dua, and reassured his companions with words of hope and faith. His trust wasn't in numbers, in weapons, or in alliances. It was in Allah alone. And Allah sent His help through the unseen, confirming that victory does not come from the material, it comes from trust. If you constantly turn to people to solve what only Allah can fix, you will always be disappointed. But if you train your soul to seek Him first, you will experience a peace that no human interaction can give. Allah loves the heart that depends entirely on Him. He loves the one who cries to Him in the darkness, who trusts Him even when things don't make sense, who believes that with every hardship comes ease, because that belief is rooted in His promise. So next time you feel broken, don't rush to post about it. Don't rush to call someone. Don't rush to complain. First rush to the prayer mat. Raise your hands. Speak to your Lord. And know that He will never turn you away empty-handed. Your healing, your strength, and your peace all begin with that single silent conversation with the one who never tires of hearing from you. Have you ever considered that your silence in front of people could be more powerful than 1,000 words, simply because your heart is busy speaking to the one who already knows everything? Why do we feel the need to explain our pain to those who cannot truly heal us, when the one who created our hearts is waiting for us to turn to Him in full trust and surrender? Allah already knows the detail of every tear, every disappointment, and every hardship. Yet, He still wants us to call on Him, not because He needs our words, but because we need His mercy. Sometimes when we go through trials, our first instinct is to turn to those around us, family, friends, even strangers online. We want someone to understand, but often that leaves us feeling emptier, not stronger. And that's because no one can carry your pain the way Allah can. No one can replace the peace that comes when your trust is placed firmly in Him. He says in the Quran, "And whoever puts his trust in Allah, then He will suffice him." Surah At-Talaq 65:3. That's not just a promise, it's a reminder that no matter how severe the problem, Allah is enough. When the Prophet Muhammad stood on the battlefield of Badr, facing an army 3 times the size of his own, he didn't complain or seek help from powerful tribes. He raised his hands and made dua, saying, "O Allah, if this small group of believers perishes, there will be no one left to worship you on earth." That moment was filled with vulnerability and complete trust. And Allah responded not with just victory, but with angels descending to support the believers. The Prophet turned to no one but Allah, and it was Allah who made the impossible possible. There's a deep kind of strength in holding your problems privately and turning your face toward a Qibla instead of turning your back toward Allah. The more you tell people, the more you risk your sincerity, your peace, and sometimes even your dignity. But when you confide in your Lord, your secret is safe, your heart is heard, and your burden is gently lifted. That's the power of Tawakkul, not just to believe in Allah, but to live like you believe in Him. After the loss of his infant son Ibrahim, the Prophet shed tears but did not wail or question the decree of Allah. He simply said, "The eyes shed tears and the heart grieves, but we do not say except what pleases our Lord." That is submission, that is love, that is trust. He didn't need validation from others to accept his pain. He knew that the comfort of Allah was better than the comfort of 1,000 men. Sometimes your silence is your strength. Not because you don't have anything to say, but because you've chosen the higher path, trusting that Allah sees what's in your heart and will bring justice, healing, and reward in a way no human can. Allah knows the pain you hide behind your smile. He knows the nights you couldn't sleep. He knows the prayers you whispered through tears, and none of it goes unnoticed. When the Prophet was returning from Taif, humiliated and injured, he could have vented his anger. But instead he turned to Allah and made one of the most powerful du'as in the surah, saying, "As long as you are not angry with me, I do not care." That moment defined his strength, not in fighting back, but in surrendering fully to the will of Allah. That's the path of the believer. So the next time life overwhelms you, resist the urge to broadcast your pain. Don't let your test become public entertainment. Instead, walk to the prayer mat. Bow your head, pour your heart out to the one who never tires of hearing from you, and then walk away with your head held high, knowing that you have placed your trust in the one whose mercy has no limit. Your silence before people is not weakness, it's trust. And Allah is enough.